afterwards. So, anyway.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I am a late addition, but I do appreciate you fitting me in. We have been taking the bus all over the state, and I'll talk a little bit about that more. To begin with, my name is Pat Harris. I am not well known, which I am changing every day. The first time I actually did a campaign thing was a couple of months ago. The gentleman introduced me and said, "Please welcome Dan Harris." To which somebody whispered to him, and he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. It's Ron Harris." No, it's Pat Harris. I do appreciate it. I am not, as you know, since you haven't seen me, a politician. The closest I've come is that generally as I go through airports, about twice a month, somebody will come up to me and say, "You look a lot like Joe Biden." One woman actually came up to me and said, "Joe Biden's a little better looking than you." I am running for the United States Senate. Why? I'm going to answer some questions in my speech, the questions I get asked most frequently. Number one is why? I am a 25-year civil rights and criminal defense attorney throughout California. I'm based in Los Angeles. Excuse me. I actually have been involved in politics all my life. My mother was a Democrat delegate to the 1984 National Convention, a Gary Hart delegate. And I grew up in a Democratic family. My mother sort of considered things to be Democrat God family. We were very strong in the party. Thank you so much. And so I've always been sort of active in Democratic politics, but started practicing law and got involved in that. And I guess what really started me down the road to thinking about running was I began to believe the Democratic Party has moved away from its roots, moved away from working men and women, and I became a little more discouraged all the time about that. And I became discouraged because I felt like a lot of times we weren't fighting. We were just sort of rolling over. We became the party of we're going to compromise with them. Meantime, they weren't going to compromise with us. We became a party that no longer fought. I got very upset a couple of years ago. I think what started this was when the Merrick Garland nomination for the Supreme Court. And we chose at that time, I believe, the Democratic Party and the leadership, we put up a little bit of a fight, but nowhere near what we needed to. That was a constitutional crisis. It was. It was a travesty of the largest dimension, and when I talk to people about Donald Trump, and obviously the effect he's had in just 1 year, and the effect he'll have over the next 3 years, if he manages to make it, it's obviously going to be traumatic, but I'm not sure it will match the effect of the fact that we got scourge put on the Supreme Court, because with the Republicans right now, we're going to be looking at the Republican Supreme Court for about 30 or 40 years. So think about that, and the effect that's going to have on this country. That should have been an instance where the Democratic Party shut down the government.
That's right.
That should have been an instance where they should have been marching. We should have been marching the streets. That should have never been allowed to happen in this country. It was thievery. That's exactly what it was. It was thievery. It should have never been allowed to happen. We should have stood up and said, we are not going to allow this. We're not going to let government continue. Every time Ted Cruz gets indigestion, he shuts down the government, or tries to. We should be doing the same type things when we see issues like that. I decided that I'd go to town hall that Senator Feinstein was talking about in Los Angeles to sort of see what her opinions were on things. I just disagree with her. I think Senator Feinstein's had a good career. I think she's done a lot of things that are commendable. However, at the town hall, she started off by saying Medicare for All was a government takeover. That upset me, which I'll talk about a little more in a minute. And then a little later, she said, what we don't need in Washington, we don't need rabble-rousers. And all I could think of is that's exactly what we need in Washington, D.C. We need some rabble-rousers. We need people like Elizabeth Warren. We need people like Bernie Sanders. We need people, Chris Murphy out of Connecticut. We need people who are going to pick on issues, get out there, fight for them, stand for them, and not just roll over it and make them national issues. Elizabeth Warren's done that for what we consider to be Wall Street and Wall Street corporations, she's put that on the front burner in this country's agenda. That's what we've got to have. I believe very strongly that I'm the person to do this. And you can say, why? Who are you? You've got no political career. Well, for 25 years, I've been a civil rights and criminal defense attorney in the state of California, as I said. During that time, I've taken on just about everybody. I've taken on Pfizer, Wells Fargo, Bank of America. I took on the Catholic Church over the sexual abuse of children. I took on, thank you. I took on Kenneth Starr, you may remember him in the 1990s.
Yeah.
For 6 years, fought him. We ended up winning in the court of law with a woman named Susan McDougal. I chose, when I came out of law school, I made the choice. I came out of the University of Michigan, which was considered one of the better law schools in the country, and I had a lot of opportunities to go work in corporate America, starting at 6-figure salaries. I chose to go work for a public defender's office in Nashville for what amounted to about $2,000 a month. Because this is what I believe in. I believe in fighting for those who don't have a voice. I believe in fighting for those who are unable to fight for themselves in this country. I don't think we're doing that as a Democratic Party anymore. It upsets me. Because that's the Democratic Party I grew up with. We stood for the working men and women. We stood for those who didn't have a voice. And I'm afraid we've gotten drifted away from that. And we now become the party that goes straight to Wall Street for money. When I announced, or excuse me, when Dianne Feinstein announced the night, on Monday night, Tuesday night, she went, the very first thing, she went to Beverly Hills, to a billionaire's home, and had a fundraiser. Invited the press, many Democratic officials came around. They were seen photographs sipping champagne around the swimming pool. It's kind of the worst optics you could possibly have in the Democratic Party at this point. That's why we can't get the votes of working men and women. That night, while she was doing that, I was in Sonora in a dive bar. I won't explain why I was in a dive bar until later on. We'll talk about that after. But we were talking to people about real things. We were talking to them about the environment and logging. We were talking to real people because that's how you win elections. That's how we move this country forward. And that's who I am. And that's what I'll do as a fighter. Now, what does that mean in terms of issues? Let me tell you, I support very strongly Medicare for All. I believe very, very strongly in that, in SB 562. I do not believe, in fact, when Senator Feinstein said it was a government takeover, I felt like that was a very incorrect statement because it is not socialized medicine. That's one of the Republican talking points. And I got to tell you, I remember that same phrase being used, government takeover. You remember when it was used? The 1960s, when we were looking at Medicare and Medicaid being introduced. It was used by Barry Goldwater and the Republicans. It's not a government takeover. It's not socialized medicine. It's a way to get health care to everybody in this country, which is a right. It should be a right. That's number one. Number two, I believe very strongly in criminal justice reform. As a criminal defense attorney, I've seen what's going on. We need, number one, we need bail reform in this country in the worst way, and it can be done. I know how it can be done. I'd be happy to talk about that. Number two, we need to eliminate for-profit prisons. That is one of the scourges of this country that we actually have to fill. We have quotas where we have to fill beds so that they can make a profit.
Yep. That's California.
Yep. Number three, I will tell you that there are DNA rape kits sitting in police offices because we are not willing to fund the money to actually have the rape kits tested. And that is a ridiculous thing in a country this size where we've got men out there sexually assaulting women. We've got rape kits, which would take some of these men off the streets, and we don't provide the money to do it. That is an absolute travesty as well. Now, third thing, speaking of women, I was at a fundraiser, or excuse me, at a Democratic meeting the other night, and one of my opponents stood up and gave a rousing speech about we need to have equal rights for women and we need equal pay for women. It's a great applause line, everybody cheers, claps, and then he moves on. because that's what's happening. I've heard that line since 1978,
Yeah,
and there hasn't been a damn thing done about
that's
it.
right.
We need to quit talking about equal pay and equal rights for women and do something about it. And I'll tell you exactly what we need to do, because I'll tell you how to do it. Number one, you hire additional people. You take funds from the Defense Department and hire additional people for the EEOC, for the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, so that they can investigate. Number two, that's what you do. You start investigating companies, especially those with government contracts and government agencies, to determine if women are being paid less than what they should be. Number three, if you find out that they aren't, you incentivize them. You give them opportunities, tax breaks, things like that, to make sure that women get equal pay. And number four, if they refuse to do it, you indict them. You civilly indict them. I work with the Department of Justice all the time. They indict people, all the companies and so forth, for refusal to work with minorities. You can do the same thing with women if we have the willingness. As I tell that story and as I talk about that for the last 6 months, lo and behold, lo and behold, last week, guess what? It's exactly what Iceland did. Iceland put in a program, almost exactly that thing, to make sure that women get equal pay. We need to quit talking the game and actually start doing something. It's like I said, 1978 was when I first heard that. And you know, women still get paid the exact same 78 cents on a dollar 30 years later.
Yeah.
Now, fourth thing. I promise I'll get through this very quickly. Fourth thing, we need to cut the Defense Department. The budget's way too much. I believe, again, my opponent, somebody who's been sponsoring increased defense spending. I use the phrase that Winston Churchill said during World War II when he was approached about cutting things like culture, arts, education, when he said, well, exactly what are we fighting for then? We need to get rid of that. Number five, we need to cut corporate welfare. It's totally out of hand. This tax bill was ridiculous. It's nothing but a handout to corporations. Number six, you can walk outside and see where we stand. We have an eco-friendly bus. It's powered in the inside by solar panels that are on the roof. Totally recyclable inside. Recycles everything from the floors to the bamboo on the windows. And we're converting it to ethanol next week. So we're taking it all around the state. I will end by saying that's my platform. Here's what I ask you. I ask you this. Please take a look at us. We've got a pass. I think we're passing around a sheet, I hope, a sign-up sheet. Please take a look at that. Sign up for us. We'd love to keep in contact. We have a strategy, and our strategy is we're staying mostly outside of Los Angeles and San Francisco because we want to talk to real voters and real people. We have been here already. This will be our first trip to this county. We will be back, I guarantee you, 3 to 4 to 5 times. You'll get so sick of seeing us around here, you'll want to kick us out of the county. This is where we're going to win the election. We have been in San Bernardino 5 times. We've been in Fresno so many times. They're sick of us. We have been up and down this county, this state. This is where we're going to win it because these are the people, you are the people that we need to be talking to. I asked lastly, we don't take corporate donations. If you feel like writing a $2 million check, feel free. If you can't, we'll take 10 or 15 bucks. Whatever you've got, we would love it. And with that, I'll end, and I think it's all right.
How much do you know about Northern California and what it needs?
If you want to talk about water, if you want, I mean, for example,
I want your opinion.
no, I know quite a bit about it. I actually spend a good deal of time up here, but I know, for example, I mean, I'd be happy to talk to you about the Delta tunnels, which I oppose. I'd be happy to talk to you about, obviously, the lack of infrastructure, which you guys know about better than just about anybody. I'd be happy to talk to you about the different dams being built. I'm very familiar with the homeless issues. I support the marijuana industry, and I'm very happy to talk to you about that. Those are all issues. I'll be around. I'm not going anywhere.
You'll be available for additional questions
Absolutely.
and with the tour of the bus, but also
If
just
you like.
further questions so you really actually have the time without it holding
Yes.
up the meeting.
We'll be happy to do it.
Yeah.
Thank you.